There's a certain type of person who walks into a room and immediately knows if something is off. Nobody said anything. Nothing obvious happened, but they feel it. The tension, the sadness, the unspoken fight that happened before anyone else even arrived. They don't know how they know. They just do. These are the people that get called too sensitive, the ones who are told they care too much, the ones who somehow end up being the emotional sponge in every friend group, every family system, every workplace, and even in their relationships. They're the ones who feel exhausted after social events, who need silence the way other people need caffeine, who absorb emotions like a psychological Wi Fi router. We call them empaths. And today we're planting a very uncomfortable thought. What if being an empath isn't about being soft at all, but about having a nervous system tuned to the frequency most people can't even hear? And what if the world quietly exploits that? Let's talk about the real psychology of empathy, the brain, the hormones, the culture that creates empaths, the difference between true empaths and the dark empath, and how to develop empathy without letting anyone hollow you out. Plant that thought, baby. But what exactly is empathy anyway? I mean, not the Instagram version, but the real one. So let's clean this up right away. Empathy is not just being nice, right? It's not just being nice. It's not about being passive really, right? I mean, empaths, they take a lot of very direct action. It's not about being passive. And quite frankly, it's not about being emotionally fragile. In fact, these people have very strong emotional resilience. And it's not about letting people walk all over you either. That is not what empathy is. Empathy is a neuropsychological process, not a personality quirk. And science breaks empathy into really two major systems, right? We talked about this before with the dark empaths, right? There's something called affective empathy, the ability to feel what another person is feeling. And then we have number two, cognitive empathy, the ability to understand what another person is feeling. Now, empaths tend to score really high on both. And neuroscientifically, empathy activates things like the insula, that part of the brain that it's really about sort of like internal, I guess, emotional awareness. A lot of sort of processing of those emotions and kind of figuring out what exactly it is that you're feeling. A lot of the time, they work with the amygdala. You also have the anterior cingulate cortex, which really, I guess, would be more like your emotional evaluation. And it also helps to process pain. And then finally, you've got that little turd, the amygdala. This dude is all about emotional salience. This guy picks up on fearful faces, disgust, over the top happiness, really strong emotions, and mirror neuron systems, which fire when you observe someone doing something, right? Especially if it's an emotion. And really what happens is you sort of like mirror their emotion and you experience it yourself. Your brain really doesn't know the difference between actually feeling something or doing something and watching someone else feel or do something. Now, this means something really important. An empath doesn't imagine how you feel. Their brain partially simulates it. That's not weakness. That's major bandwidth, my dude. And let's be honest, with the cost of RAM going up, this is the way you want to go. Now, let's talk about the empath brain, right? And the nervous system, right? We got a little bit in there for a second, but let's get real deep, right? Because to understand the empath, we have got to look at the literal wiring of the human machine, my dudes. This isn't a personality quirk. Uh-uh. This is a high sensitivity hardware configuration. While a standard sort of nervous system has a thick emotional firewall, right? Really difficult to sort of like penetrate that thing. Not with the empath. The empath system is essentially an open port network. I mean, this translates to really high performance, right? Especially when it comes to emotions, but also high exhaust, right? These people are exhausted, right? They have a heightened limbic system reactivity, right? And the limbic system is really the it's the brain's emotional command center, right? It actually contains the amygdala, and so forth. And in empaths, the amygdala and the insula, right? They show significantly higher activation when observing others in pain. This means they aren't just noticing a vibe, their brain is sounding a four alarm fire for a situation that's not even theirs. I mean, these people are super intuitive and just really locked in to other people's emotions. They also have what's called a stronger emotional contagion response. We all have mirror neurons. I mean, except for maybe the psychopath, right? And this allows us to understand someone else's actions. But empaths really experience instant resonance. If someone enters a room with high vibration anxiety, the empath's heart rate and cortisol levels often spike in a mimicry of what's going on, right? They're basically copying the response before a single word is even spoken. They have increased physiological arousal in social environments. I mean, because they're absorbing more, I guess, data points, right? Micro expressions, tone shifts, even changes in breathing, really. I mean, this is how locked in these people are. But what happens is their nervous system is under constant cognitive load. I mean, they are metabolizing emotional data at 3 times the rate of a baseline human. And this leads to rapid sensory overload. This biological intensity is then amplified by oxytocin. We know this is the bonding hormone, baby. Give someone a hug, oxytocin. Pet a cat or a dog, oxytocin, right? Well, empaths have more sensitive oxytocin receptors. What does this do? I mean, look, it creates really a stronger attachment response. They actually have deeper relational imprinting. So, like when they get into a relationship, the high of the connection is even higher than normal. The low of rejection, though, is like a physical catastrophe for these people. I mean, they feel it all so deep. And I mean, this is why an empath is physically drained after conflict, right? I mean, they struggle in chaotic environments like malls or loud offices. And a lot of the time, they require significant recovery time after emotional labor. I mean, they need to recharge those batteries because they are a freaking supercomputer. They need the power. I mean, they're like those data centers, right, that are eating up all the power and making my electrical bill go up. Thanks a lot, tech dudes, you dorks. And finally, look, a lot of people look at empaths as being like dramatic or overly dramatic. They're not. They're not dramatic. They are just running a more expensive power grid. It burns through fuel faster, my dudes. They need the time. They've got to go home and chill out for a while. Yeah, I mean, look, they can be around people, but I'm telling you right now, the more chaotic and emotion filled that room is, the faster they're going to burn out because they're picking it up fast or processing it fast. They've got it all, baby. Now, are we born like this, right? How do people become empaths, right? It's not random. People love to talk about being born an empath, right? And while there is a genetic component, right? There is. Empathy is it's often a learned adaptation, right? It's really a survival strategy that the brain, I guess, hard codes into the nervous system during the formative years, right? When you're growing up. And there are three really major pathways that create this high empathy adult, right? Number one, this is major, early emotional attunement. This is the healthy path, right? I mean, when children are raised in emotionally responsive environments, right? They have caregivers who mirror them effectively, right? Because their own emotions are being validated, right, during those mirroring moments, right? Their nervous system learns that other people's emotions matter. They develop empathy from a place of security, right? It's not a weakness. It allows them to use it as a tool rather than a burden. Now, the second emotional pathway that can be taken is when you have early emotional insecurity. And this leads to what's called hypervigilant. And this is unfortunately the more darker but more common path. I mean, kids that grow up with an unpredictable or volatile or narcissistic caregivers, right? I mean, they don't really develop empathy. They develop more of a tactical surveillance. I mean, they had to read the room to stay safe. If they could sense dad's mood, if they could sense his mood shift, right, by the way he closes the front door or something like that, right, they can run and hide. But what happens is over time, right, this this survival scanning, if you will, becomes a permanent setting, right? And it really results in an adult who is pathologically attuned to everyone else's needs because they are still subconsciously striving, really trying to stay safe. It's really interesting. I knew a very anxious, attached woman, and I mean, the more I look at this sort of second pathway here, this is exactly what it feels like she is, really sort of like in tune with other people's emotions. Not so great for her own, unfortunately. There's also, the biological path, if you will, temperament plus sensory sensitivity. Now, some people are born with like sensory processing sensitivity, SPS, right? They literally have a lower threshold for sensory input. I mean, the light is brighter, sound is louder, and emotions are really heavier for these people. I mean, for these individuals, empathy is a byproduct of being a human sponge. I mean, they take in more data, they process more emotion, and empathy in these contexts is an adaptation, right? It's not a lifestyle choice, right? Whether it was built for connection or survival, I mean, it changes the way you navigate the world, period. And then this brings us to the next part, right? Something I've talked about on here before, and it actually got quite a lot of love. So let's go ahead and re-mention the dark empath, and really try to compare the dark empath, I guess, with the empath. All right, so let's clear this up. I mean, dark empaths exist, right? But they are not empaths in the same way that we talk about true empaths. So, what is a true empath, right? What are the things we've just talked about, really? Here's a summary: high affective empathy, high cognitive empathy. So, again, feeling emotion and knowing what your emotions are. They are motivated by care and connection. These are just good people. And sometimes this means that they're going to struggle with boundaries, right? They're going to feel guilt really easily. Like if someone's feelings get hurt, it's going to destroy them, right? But they'll bounce back because they've got so much emotional sort of salience. The dark empath, on the other hand, they have really high cognitive empathy, right? Just like the empath. But here's where the real change takes place. They might understand what emotions you're feeling, but they do not feel them with you. They have very low affective empathy. Very low affective empathy. And this is problematic, right? And this actually leads to a lot of the manipulation that dark empaths are kind of known for, really. Now, they would probably say it's a defense mechanism, and it might be. They understand emotions, but they don't feel them deeply. I mean, that's the reality, right? And the other problem here, and the reason that they are really, set apart from the true empath, is that they often develop other traits associated with, the dark triad, for instance, narcissism, uh, Machiavellianism, which, is really sort of like this ability to sort of manipulate others to do what you want them to do. And again, if you have a narcissist doing this, this can become really problematic. I mean, you don't want a narcissist manipulating you. they use emotional insight strategically, right? They learn something maybe about you, and then they sort of like, insert that into a discussion when they want to get something from you. I mean, dark empaths, they don't absorb emotion, they analyze it. And then they use it against you, or they use it for themselves. I'm sure that's the way they would want to look at it. And maybe they're right. Now, there's a difference, though, between resonance and reconnaissance, right? I mean, empaths are feeling everything. Dark empaths might be feeling a little tiny bit, but what they're doing is they're calculating, right? They're using the old noggin. And if you've ever thought, how did they know exactly what to say and still hurt me? That right there is the distinction between the dark empath and the true empath. But there's a cognitive side of this, right? I mean, there's a cognitive side of empathy. Thinking matters. And I mean, most people talk about empathy like it's just a word for like, emotional flooding, feelings, right? Soft science. But if you want to survive as a high sensitivity person, I mean, you have to understand the cognitive side, my dudes. Empathy isn't just raw emotional leak. It is high level executive skill, baby. And it requires a massive amount of processing power. Your brain, if you have this, that control center, it's taking in input and it's pumping output like you wouldn't believe. To do it right, you have to have more than a big heart. I mean, your brain has to be sharp. You've got to have a sharp mind. Perspective taking. I mean, this is the ability to cognitively step outside of your own experience and view a situation from another person's vantage point. It's not just a feeling, right? It's not just feeling their pain, it's understanding the logic behind their pain. Now, this requires executive functioning, baby, right up there in the old prefrontal cortex. It means your brain has to actively suppress your own immediate reactions. Why? You need to make room for other people's. You also have this thing called theory of mind. And this was first discussed, I believe, by Piaget. This is that psychological milestone, if you will, right? Where you start to recognize that other people have beliefs, desires, and intentions that are different from your own, right? Now, for an empath, theory of mind is a safety valve. It allows you to say, that is their emotional state, not mine. It kind of creates like this, I guess, conceptual buffer zone for the empath, right? Between your identity as the empath and the chaos that is coming from them. And so, that's a really important piece of this. And there's also the cognitive empathy versus the affective empathy, right? Cognitive empathy lives in the prefrontal cortex, the logical decision making part of the brain. Affective empathy, the feeling part, it lives in the older, more reactive parts of the brain, right? And when these two are in balance, oh my goodness, you are just a compassionate observer, right? When they are out of balance, you become an emotional victim. We want to keep them in balance, guys. Keep your cognitive and your affective empathy in balance. Now, empathy without structure becomes self erasure, right? If your affective empathy isn't balanced by cognition, you fall into emotional flooding. Now, this is basically where you lose the ability to distinguish your own needs from other people's needs, right? And this leads to pathological people pleasing, really, a total loss of self. I mean, this is a nightmare, right? I mean, you stop being a person, you start becoming a response to everyone else, right? I knew a lady like this, the one I talked about earlier. I used to work with this chick. I mean, that's all she was. She didn't even have a personality. She was really just a response to everyone else. I mean, it was sad. And I mean, if you want to truly be a healthy empath, someone who's ethically masculine, if you will, you have to lead with your prefrontal cortex. You have got to use your intelligence to build a structure, right, around your sensitivity. And you want to do this so you can really help other people without drowning alongside them, right? I mean, if you're trying to help them and then you're breaking down right alongside them, you're so deep into their pain, right, that you can't function. Yeah, that's not going to help. That's going to hurt you and them. What does culture think about this? What does society say? How do they exploit empaths? Well, here's the uncomfortable truth: modern culture rewards emotional labor, but it rarely protects the people who perform it. Empaths often become unpaid therapists, right? They're the friend you're always running to give you help, and then you just stab them right in the back because you're not that empathetic. You're a fake. They're the emotional regulators, right? They're the mediators. It's that second child syndrome. You're always trying to smooth things over with your parents and your crazy siblings. You're the caregiver, right? You love to take care of people. These people, they get taken advantage of constantly, especially in families, right? At work, we praise empathy, but then we weaponize it. We tell empaths to be understanding while telling everyone else to set boundaries. That imbalance, it burns people out. And I mean, unfortunately, this is where behaviorism comes in, right? I mean, empaths are often reinforced for calming other people down. They're praised for it. They're given sort of kudos for helping to smooth tension out of the situation. They're given kudos for sacrificing their needs. That is not good. This teaches their nervous system connection comes from self neglect. Now, I'm sorry, but that's not empathy. That's just conditioning, and it's fixable. That's the good news. So, how do we develop empathy without losing yourself? We need to install a regulatory valve on your sensitivity, right? The biggest mistake that people make is thinking that being empathetic means being available. That is a lie. That is a lie. Empathy is not access. My dudes, it is not access. And compassion requires boundaries, quite frankly. If you don't have a no, your yes means absolutely nothing. Here is how you build healthy empathy without the side effect of self destruction. First, practice perspective without absorption. I mean, you need to learn how to understand the emotion without merging with it, right? I mean, if a friend is venting about their divorce, you can recognize the shape of their grief, the sadness, right? The anger, maybe, right? Without letting that grief sit in your chest. I mean, think of yourself more like a translator, right? Rather than a sponge. Translate their experience into understanding. Don't just soak it up into your own tissues. I mean, that's not healthy for you. And we need you guys in this world. Number two, regulate before responding. I mean, your nervous system sets the tone for the interaction, right? If you rush into fix, right? You rush into comfort while your own heart is sort of racing. I mean, you're not just adding more chaos to the room, you're actually making it more difficult to help them out. Right? I mean, when someone comes to you with a high intensity drama situation, take a physiological sigh, right? Two inhales through the nose, one long exhale through the mouth. You'll reset that vagus nerve. It lowers your own heart rate, right? And what this allows you to do is to provide that steady anchor that the other person is really subconsciously looking for. And that way they can sort of like co regulate with rather than you being swept away by their current. Now, number three, you want to name emotions, don't inherit them, right? This is the cognitive labeling technique. All right. Instead of saying, I feel so stressed for you, say to yourself, I see that they are anxious right now. This simple shift in language, moving from I feel to I see, activates your prefrontal cortex, my dudes. Come on. You're creating visual distance between your own empathy, your own emotions, right? And them, right? They're your between your soul and theirs. I mean, you're acknowledging the weather in their world without letting it rain on yours. Number four, you want to build identity complexity. You have got to build some identity complexity. Empaths who anchor the identity solely in being helpful, they're the easiest to take advantage of. They're the easiest to drain, right? If your only value is being there for people, right, you will let people bleed you dry just to feel valuable, right? That's too much. You have got to take care of yourself. You have got to have internal pillars, hobbies, a mission, fitness goals, personal set of values. Ethical masculinity is something I teach over at Plant the Spark, my dating and relationship channel. When you have a solid self built outside of your relationships, you become undrainable because you aren't basing your life force off of the validation of others at that point. All right, next we have strategic detachment, right? I mean, you've got to accept the hard truth that caring does not require self sacrifice. Come on. If a family member is in a repetitive cycle of self destruction, right? Strategic detachment means you can love them from the distance, right? You can love them from a distance without jumping into that hole with them. You can offer resources, you can offer a phone call, but you detach from the outcome. Their failure is not your failure. Empathy is a skill, it is not a life sentence. Right? When you master these 5 pillars, you stop being a victim of your own heart and you start to become a leader of your own life, right? You become the person who can walk into the storm, hold the umbrella for someone else, and walk out completely and totally dry. Now, in a world of algorithms, outrage, emotional manipulation, right? I mean, empathy is either your greatest strength, it can be, or your greatest vulnerability. Unfortunately, for a lot of you, it is. The difference, guys, it is awareness. Empaths who understand their wiring become leaders, right? I mean, these are the people who can lead a business and make their employees feel good about coming to work, right? They enjoy their time there, right? And this is very rare, believe me. Healers. These are the people who can become healers, stabilizers, right? I mean, these are the people who make the world a better place, right? Without losing themselves. And unfortunately, though, the empaths who don't, they become depleted. Many of them become resentful, actually. And then lastly, they become invisible. Like, how can you be seen if you're giving so freely to everyone without any care about yourself? The problem isn't that you feel deeply, guys. It's not. The problem is that no one ever taught you when to open and when to close and when to walk away. I mean, empathy isn't about carrying everyone's pain. It's about understanding it without becoming it. So here's the question I want you to sit with. Are you feeling because you choose to, or because you never learned how not to? Plant that thought. If this episode resonated, hit subscribe, share it with the empath who is tired but still caring. And remember, sensitivity, it's not weakness, it's power without armor. I'm Mike. This is Planting Thoughts.